What if I told you that Tom Bombadil, the cheerful singing spirit of the forest, once met the Witch King of Angmar in secret? And not just that, but they made a pact, one that shaped the fate of Middle-earth more than anyone ever realized. It sounds crazy, like fan fiction, but the hints are there, scattered in Tolkien's letters, the appendices, and the silences between the lines. It's not about what was said outright. It's about what was left unsaid. And when you piece it together, it tells a story almost no one is asking. But maybe they should be. The Witch King, wrapped in shadows, stepped into the old forest. Not with an army, not with threats, but alone. Searching for someone the ring couldn't touch Tom Bombadil. Why? Because Tom isn't like anyone else in Middle-earth. He doesn't fear the ring. He doesn't serve power. And maybe, just maybe, the Witch King knew he was losing something. This wasn't a battle. It was a conversation. And the outcome may have decided more than either of them realized. A chilling, what-if story. But before we dive into the meeting, we need to understand who these two beings really are and why this moment mattered so much. When it comes to Tom Bombadil, little is known for sure, but what we do know sets him apart from every other being in Middle-earth. He's not an elf. He's not a man. He's not even a Maya, at least not in the traditional sense. Tom calls himself eldest. He claims to remember the world before the Dark Lord came from outside. And that's not just a poetic line, it's a timeline breaker. The only beings that old are the Ainur, the first creations of Eru Ilúvatar. That means Tom Bombadil may have existed before the shaping of Arda itself, before the sun, before the moon, before even Morgoth first stirred rebellion. He doesn't live in a fortress or hold court in a great city. When the hobbits meet him in the Fellowship of the Ring, he's just out in the old forest, singing, laughing, dancing with Goldberry, and casually saving them from monsters like Old Man Willow and the Barrow-wights. And when Frodo offers him the One Ring, Tom just shrugs, slips it on, and nothing happens. He doesn't vanish. He doesn't feel its weight. He laughs at it. It has no power over him. None. Even Gandalf admits that Tom is a mystery beyond the understanding of the elves, the wizards, or even the wise. Some think he's a spirit of the land, tied to Arda itself. Others think he's a living echo of the original music, the divine harmony that shaped the world. Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. Tom Bombadil doesn't play by anyone's rules. Not Sauron's, not Ilúvatar's, maybe not even time itself. And that might be the very reason the Witch King went looking for him. Not to conquer him, not to destroy him, but to understand what made him so different. The Witch King was not always a wraith. Long ago, in a time before he became a name spoken in fear, he was a man, powerful, respected, and likely descended from Númenórean blood. He would have been a king, or a lord of great standing, wise in his own way, perhaps even noble at first. But like many, he desired more: knowledge, power, immortality. And Sauron offered him exactly that. During the Second Age, Sauron took on a fair form and disguised himself as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. He seduced the elven smiths of Ereg Eon with his knowledge of craft and magic, helping them forge the Rings of Power, beautiful, potent artifacts meant to preserve and strengthen. But behind their beauty was a secret purpose. Sauron had forged his own ring, the One Ring, in secret at Mount Doom. It was meant to control all the others. A master ring. And when he put it on, the true purpose of the others was revealed to be controlled by his one ring. The 3 elven rings escaped his control, hidden away. But the 7 were given to the dwarves, and the 9 were given to men, to kings, lords, and warriors. Among them was the man who would become the Witch King. At first, the rings gave these men power, influence, long life. but they came with a hidden cost. Slowly, year by year, they began to fade. Their bodies grew thin, their identities blurred, their souls were pulled into the shadow, until there was nothing left of them but will and obedience. Slaves to the One Ring, slaves to Sauron. The greatest of these was the Witch King. He became the Lord of the Nazgul, the Ring Wraiths. His voice could command armies, his very presence could break courage. He was sent north to found Angmar and destroy the last kingdoms of the Dunedain. For centuries he waged war, tearing apart Arnor piece by piece. He became more than a king. He became fear itself. But through it all, through wars, through power, through death, one thing remained true. He no longer had a name or a face or even memory of who he once was. Replaced by the ring, Sauron, and empty servitude to him. But not all ties to the past can be broken, not completely. And that's what brings us to the Old Forest. Despite all his power, the Witch King never touched Tom Bombadil's domain. Not once, not with scouts, not with wraiths, not even when Angmar was at its peak. It was like an invisible line had been drawn, a line not even he dared cross. And that makes us wonder, why? And that's where the mystery deepens. If the Witch King was so hesitant to send his armies into the Old Forest, why would he himself go? At first glance, they couldn't be more different. One is a creature of darkness, domination, and dread. The other sings to flowers and laughs at the most powerful artifact in the world. But that contrast might be the very reason the Witch King sought him out. The Witch King's entire existence was defined by the Ring of Power. He was controlled and dominated by it. He no longer had a name, no face, no body. But Tom couldn't be dominated. The ring had no grip on him. That alone would make Bombadil terrifying to someone like the Witch King, not because he was an enemy, but because he represented something the Witch King had lost: freedom. So what if? At some point during the rise of Angmar, the Witch King sought Bombadil not as a foe, but as someone who could help him. Most know the Witch King as Sauron's most feared servant, the Lord of the Nazgul, Master of Fear, Commander of the Dead. But behind the armor, the shrieks, and the shadow, he was still a soul, and Tom Bombadil perhaps would know a way to free him. So maybe once, before Angmar's full rise, before the Ringwraith fully disappeared into shadow, the Witch King made a secret journey, not with armies or threats, alone, quiet, desperate, seeking redemption. And Tom, maybe he answered, maybe not with clarity, but in the fashion that Tom Bombadil would answer a riddle, a truth that couldn't be taken, only understood. However, the tragedy of their meeting is, the Witch King was unable to grasp that riddle. He took the riddle as power, as prophecy, not warning, and the path that could have saved him only sealed his fate. Tom likely saw what would come, that the man before him would fall too far to return. So he decided to make a pact, sealed by his and the Witch's King's words. Tom Bombadil was never concerned with the wars of kings, the rise of empires, or the spread of Sauron's rising influence. But he did care about the Old Forest. It was his home, one of the last untouched places in Middle-earth, older than most kingdoms, and filled with ancient, rooted power. And while Tom likely could have handled the Witch King alone, he also understood that the forces behind him, the other Nazgul, and worse, Sauron himself, might one day come for what they had no right to claim. Rather than wait for that day to arrive, Tom may have made a decision that only he could. Not a challenge, not a warning, but a declaration rooted in something deeper than threat. Something older than even the Nazgul. A boundary, not just physical but spiritual. One that couldn't be crossed without consequence. "This land is not yours," Tom may have said. "You may pass by it, but never through it. Leave it untouched, and it will leave you whole." To the Witch King, such a statement may have carried real weight. However, in Tolkien's world, oaths and words held power. They weren't just promises, they were forces. Feanor's oath nearly destroyed the elves. Isildur's broken pact cursed an entire army. Words could bind more than flesh or steel. And Tom, with all his mystery, may have spoken an oath that did just that. The Witch King agreed. Not out of respect, not out of fear, but because he understood something few others did. Tom Bombadil could not be fought. Not in the normal sense. Not with swords or spells or even the ring. His power didn't fit into the rules Sauron played by. It was something deeper, older, and absolute. So the pact was made. The Witch King turned away, and from that day forward, the Nazgul gave the Old Forest a wide berth. They came close, but they never crossed its borders. The Barrow Downs remained a place of fear, haunted and twisted, but they were never claimed. The fog may have spread, but it stopped short of Tom's land. It's strange, though, for someone as consumed by power and conquest as the Witch King, to turn back without resistance suggests the pact wasn't just a suggestion. It might have been a command. Something Tom had the power to enforce, not just physically, but with the kind of authority that even the wraiths couldn't ignore. And that raises new questions. What if Tom hadn't drawn a line to keep the Witch King out, but had instead offered him a different kind of path? What if the pact wasn't about banishment, but about a second chance? There is still time, Tom Bombadil may have said. Let go of the ring. It's hard to say what that moment would have looked like, but maybe, for just a second, the Witch King listened. Tom didn't want power. He didn't crave control, domination, or glory. He had no interest in kingship, and certainly no use for the ring. But he could hold it, not because he was stronger than its influence, but because he was beyond it. The ring meant nothing to him, and that might have been the key. Maybe that's what Tom offered. Not a fight, not salvation, but time from the ring. A kind of freedom the Witch King hadn't known in centuries. The ring didn't need to be destroyed in that moment. It just needed to be separated from the one it controlled. The Witch King's life wasn't tied to wearing the ring. He only needed it to exist. It was the source of his immortality, his connection to the power. But if it were held by someone like Tom, unaffected and unchanging, then maybe the link could weaken. Just enough for the Witch King to remember who he was. He wouldn't be free, not truly. The curse wouldn't lift, but he also wouldn't be a servant, no longer under Sauron's direct control, no longer driven by his will. He'd still be powerful, still feared, but not hallowed like he once was. And that might have been enough. He could have become something in between. Not a man, not a wraith, a watcher, a presence that wandered the far edges of Middle-earth, bound by an oath rather than a master, no longer fighting for the enemy, but not fighting for anyone else either. In time, maybe he would have found a purpose. Maybe he would have guarded what remained of the kingdoms he once helped destroy. Maybe he would have spoken to the free peoples again, not as the Witch King, but as someone trying to make something right. Of course, it never happened. The choice was never made. But if it had been, if even for a moment the Witch King let go, the world might have looked very different, and the shadow that followed him might never have returned. If Tom Bombadil had helped the Witch King break free from Sauron's control, the entire history of Middle-earth would have shifted. First, there's Sauron's power. The Nazgul weren't just servants, they were his eyes, his voice, his reach. And the Witch King was the strongest of them all. If he turned away, it would have been more than betrayal. It would have been a crack in the Dark Lord's foundation, a crack Sauron couldn't afford. Without the Witch King leading from the shadows, Angmar may never have risen. The northern kingdom of Arnor may have survived. The war that split the kingdoms of men might have been avoided entirely. In the Third Age, during the War of the Ring, the Battle of Pelennor Fields may have ended before it began. The Witch King was the one who shattered the gates of Minas Tirith. He broke armies with fear. If he wasn't there, Gondor's defense might have held, even without Rohan's help. The prophecy wouldn't have been fulfilled. Éowyn may never have faced him. That battle, one of the most iconic in all of Tolkien's world, might never have happened at all. Even the Fellowship's journey could have been different. With the Witch King gone, the Nazgul would have been leaderless. Their hunt for the ring would have been slower, weaker, more disorganized. Frodo might have reached Rivendell without being stabbed on Weathertop. He might not have been broken by the Morgul blade. That moment shifted everything. And it was the Witch King who made it happen. But the biggest change? The fear he spread would be gone. The Witch King didn't just fight with steel. He fought with terror. He crushed hope. If the world had seen him turn against Sauron, if the strongest of the nine rejected his master, the very idea of resistance would have been reborn. It would have been a signal that no one was too far gone, that even the darkest could still choose the light. It's also likely that if the Witch King went so far as to let go of the ring, he might have even joined the fight against Sauron. It's also likely that if the Witch King went so far as to let go of the ring, he might have even joined the fight against Sauron. Not to become a hero, but to make things right in the only way he still could. He knew Sauron's mind. He knew his plans, his armies, his fears. And more than anything, he knew how to hurt him. A turn like that would have shaken the entire war. If the Witch King rejected Sauron, it would have sent a message across Middle-earth that even the most corrupted could still break free, that there was still hope. Mordor might have split from the inside. The Nazgul might have turned on each other. Gondor and Rohan might have found the help they needed before it was too late. That's the story of the Witch King and Tom Bombadil, two of the most mysterious figures in Middle-earth, whose paths may have crossed in ways we'll never fully know. Whether it was a pact of protection or a missed chance at redemption, their meeting leaves us with questions that linger long after the pages close. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to Tolkien's Realm for more deep dives into the lore of Middle-earth. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think would have happened if the Witch King had taken a different path? Thanks for watching, and until next time, may your journeys through Middle-earth be ever enlightening.